are talking The Arty Demon, or at least that is the English translation of this Russian movie. Yes, Russian movie, a bone of contention currently in 2022. I was in two minds whether I should almost cover this movie. Clearly I decided to go for it as you're watching this review, but, you know, I was in two minds, I will admit. Anyway, what is the story of The Arty Demon? So this is essentially a kind of possession movie at the end of the day. Don't be fooled by the kind of the cover art here, or even the name really, because it has very little to do with what's actually going to happen. The plot is this: we have this family where the kind of the husband slash father had gone missing kind of 10 years before, and the mother is kind of remarried, and you know the second husband is there. But the husband, the original husband, kind of returns as he is found out in the kind of the snowy wilderness in a coma, and it's, you know, no one really knows what happens initially, and you know he's brought to the hospital and then kind of brought to the house, and no one really knows how he's kind of still alive at this point. But there may well be some supernatural forces at will here. And as the movie goes on, we learn that there may well be some sort of presence which is affecting those around him. What will happen? You'll have to go and watch the movie to find out. So let us discuss what I think works in this movie. This is going to be mildly spoilery. I'm not going to give any kind of huge plot points away or anything like that, but I do want to kind of touch on a few things that might be considered a little kind of spoilery, but I'll be as vague as I can. Okay, so what works? Now, I've watched a good few Russian movies, and they do tend to have a reasonable production value in them. And that is true of this one, I think, as well. And obviously, being kind of a Russian movie, it takes place in Russia and benefits from having this kind of snowy kind of background. And although the snow, the ice, the cold doesn't really have a huge impact on the actual story, it still makes some dynamic kind of photography and kind of plays a part in this kind of, you know, cold, unforgiving kind of landscape, but it at least looks kind of aesthetically kind of quite interesting. The movie does have some genuine kind of creepy moments. They rely a little bit too heavy on jump scares, if you ask me. I don't mind a few, but I think they lean into it a little bit too much. But there are a few kind of creepy moments here and there. Good use of things like kind of sound effects, lighting and stuff to kind of emphasize the kind of the mood and kind of have that kind of creeping kind of fear sensation that obviously a good horror film should be able to do, and gives a kind of a good kind of tone to it. Speaking of tone, Russian movies tend to be kind of somewhat kind of humor-free, and that is true of this one. So it's a kind of a very much a serious horror film with, as many Russian movies are, that's kind of a somewhat oppressive atmosphere to it. I gotta say, I think the version I saw was dubbed, but even the physical acting by the actors here, I thought did a pretty good job of their performances here. Hard to judge, obviously, when you're seeing kind of a dubbed version, whether the kind of the delivery and stuff was okay. But yes, certainly the physical acting, I think, was okay here. And the movie has an interesting premise. I feel it's a little misleading in regards to what it promises. Even the first kind of sequence, the opening sequence where we have these two female hitchhikers that discover this body, I think is the best scene in the movie, if you want my honest opinion. It's the most overtly horror kind of sequence, and even though we don't know much about these two characters, I feel that was the best kind of sequence in the movie. Think of if you've seen The Empty Man and how that kind of sequence, it's not as kind of elaborate as that, but you know how that sequence was different than to the rest of the movie. It's kind of similar to this one, if you want my honest opinion. But the rest of the story, it does still have some interest, I feel. There is a somewhat of an intriguing mystery, but not quite as fun as that initial sequence would suggest. So let's move on to maybe what doesn't work here. To me, the main problem with this film is its decisions to put atmosphere first and then kind of put logic and sense second. Because there's lots of instances in this movie where people will seem to be in the same house, but they'll be completely unaware of like a ruckus, having taken place somewhere else in the house, or they'll kind of magically kind of seem to kind of like be in kind of different places and then just appear sort of somewhere else and things like this. No one seems to want to turn lights on in this kind of house. They're kind of walking around with candles or, you know, kind of like battery powered torches and things like that, and no one even attempts to kind of turn the lights on. Oh, we got to keep the kind of the spooky atmosphere here and there. So there's just lots of logic issues. I mean, even the sort of the character work here, I would say, is extremely flawed. The movie's main character is this kind of like this teenage girl, and she kind of has this love interest that we're introduced to in a kind of like the second scene of the movie, and he literally tries to kill her, and yet we're to kind of like we kind of like, she then almost forgets about that and is still, you know, kind of a love interest. I'm thinking, what? This seems really like a bizarre sort of character turn. You know, he's meant to be a somewhat sympathetic character, and, you know, there's a degree of demonic influence that kind of happens to people, but there's a sequence where he literally puts her life in danger, but this is before any type of demonic influence, but yet he's still kind of like, the girl we're still kind of giving in the time of day. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So, you know, there's kind of just lapses in logic within the movie, and it kind of, as I say, it forgoes kind of any real sense into kind of having this, just the kind of the atmosphere, style over substance, ultimately. Really, there's nothing too original about this. As I said, the actual opening sequence to me was the strongest part of the movie. It actually had the most amount of kind of tension. I feel the payoff is kind of quite weak within this film. I don't really feel the movie delivers, as I say, on the concept of an ice demon, or if you've seen the poster, it doesn't kind of like comment on that, and it doesn't really kind of live up to that kind of like that promise of, oh, this will look like a kind of a cool demon. It's just a kind of possession movie at the end of the day, and it's filled with people making unbelievably silly decisions. Some of them you can argue, you know, they're under the influence, but some people don't seem to be under the influence, and they would be the kind of the people you would think maybe the demon would maybe target. It just kind of ultimately is a little bit of a mess, this film. An atmospheric and well photographed mess. It looks great, and it has a few creepy moments, a few jump scares, well, lots of jump scares, a little bit too many, as I mentioned on that one. And, you know, good music and stuff, nice, you know, cinematography, albeit it doesn't make it, the lighting is unrealistic because we want to have spooky darkness, things like this. But it's just a little shallow at the end of the day. It just doesn't have much meat on the bones, and just feels like this is it's favouring, you know, it's kind of favouring style over any realistic kind of believability here. So to me, it fell flat, quite honestly, and I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.